Just on the UN Security Council vote this morning, your allies, France, which has hostages held in Gaza, and the UK both said the resolution firmly calls for the release of hostages. And to most people reading it, there's little difference between this language and what you abstained on in March. So why did the US feel the need to block the resolution at this time?
So it's a good question. The resolution does call for the release of hostages. What it doesn't do is link the release of hostages to an immediate unconditional ceasefire. And we have made clear throughout this process that we cannot support a resolution that calls for an unconditional, immediate ceasefire and delinks it from the release of hostages. There are still 7 American citizens who are being held hostage in Gaza, and we are not going to walk away from them. And so we worked in good faith for several weeks to try to get to yes on this resolution, to try to get to a resolution that we can vote for. As you know, we have voted for a resolution in the Security Council resolution already this year that called for a ceasefire, but it called for a ceasefire with the release of hostages. And that is our position. We firmly believe in it because we want to see those hostages come home. And I would kind of turn the question around and ask, why is it that the countries pushing this resolution couldn't actually link the two? Why they wouldn't agree to link the ceasefire to the release of hostages? What is it to the release? What is it about the release of hostages that they wouldn't support when linked to a ceasefire? It seems to us plain common sense that if there's going to be a ceasefire, that Hamas shouldn't get to continue to hold the hostages. And so we want to see the two linked, and that will continue to be our position. We will continue to look for ways to find consensus with other countries on the UN Security Council, but because of that language, this resolution is not something we could support.
But as was pointed out earlier this morning, this resolution did contain a call for the release of hostages. What was defective about it?
The defective is that they were not linked. We believe it's important that you get a ceasefire. You get a ceasefire that secures the release of hostages. And we proposed a number of different formulations that would link the two, and that would call for a ceasefire that includes the release of hostages. And I don't understand. Hold on. Let me just say, I don't understand what could be objectionable about that language.
Well, right. Well, no, but I guess the point is that other people don't understand what could be objectionable about the language that you just vetoed.
What is objectionable to us is that it calls for Israel
an immediate ceasefire and the immediate release.
It calls for an immediate ceasefire, and we don't think that Hamas. Because let's be clear about when people talk about an immediate ceasefire, what they mean is they mean for Israel to immediately stop fighting. You think Hamas is going to respect a UN Security Council resolution calling for the release of hostages? No, we don't think they are at all. So we think that if you're going to see, because we think they ought to be linked together, because then you get international support. Hold on, you can get international support, get the backing of every country in the world behind this proposal, behind this position, which is the one that the president outlined back in May, that we did get a Security Council resolution that we supported. We think that's an incredibly powerful way for the world to speak, and we're disappointed we couldn't do it here.
Well, yeah, okay, but so what would have been, I guess, would you prefer that the hostage release be put in the sentence before the ceasefire?
We think it needs to be linked together, that the ceasefire...
But how much more linked can they be?
You could say, so we put together a bunch of different, a bunch of alternative formulations of the language. I'll just give you one here. A ceasefire that secures the release of hostages. A ceasefire
and you proposed that language, and people
maybe not that exact language. We proposed a number of different formulations of the language that were not accepted, and I, for the life of me, can't understand why they weren't accepted if the parties backing the resolution really wanted to get to something that could pass the Security Council. Michelle.
Yeah, I think to